welcome to this episode of The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained, the mystical, and the otherworldly. I'm your host, C.O. Thomas, broadcast live from United Public Radio Network, 107.7 FM New Orleans. Lilydale. It's said to be a magical place where no one dies. My guest tonight, Nancy Lombardo, a full-time resident of Lilydale, will discuss what this hamlet of mediums and healers is about. But there is more. Nancy is a retired detective and police officer now serving as a medium, healer, and she is also the president of the Church of the Living Spirit. Nancy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
So, how is New York? Are you surviving up there?
Yeah, as you know, it's been quite the day. We've had warnings since yesterday, and the winds and the good thing about Lilydale, it's beautiful. The bad thing is we are part of a historic forest that has very big, humongous trees. So we always hold our breath that they don't fall on the houses. So far, so good.
I'm so excited to talk to you about Lilydale. I know a lot of people hold this mysterious place with so many different ideas. But to get this started, what led you from the police force into mediumship in Lilydale and psychic healing and things like this?
Yeah, quite the segue, right?
Yes.
It was never even in alignment to do any of this, in all honesty. I grew up 20 minutes from here, so I always was familiar about Lilydale, and I left the area for a long time. I lived in Oklahoma. That's where I did my career at. But I came back here after I retired, and I really wasn't even it wasn't Lilydale. I had a house on Lake Erie. And but I was very interested in Lilydale, always have been since I was a kid. And when my mother died, I came here and got a reading from a medium. I was raised Catholic, so my family didn't really agree with stuff in Lilydale. Yeah. But when I came back here, I was very interested. I wanted to understand what they were doing, how they were doing it. And so I came to a mediumship circle. That was run by Dr. Judith Rochester, and she lives here full time, and she's a bit of a mystic here. She's a medium to all the mediums here. And I came to her circle, and that first night I remember one of the girls in her class told me, like I was right where I was supposed to be. And that's how it all started. Believe it or not, within a couple months after that, I drove out of Lilydale, and I thought to myself, I'm moving to Lilydale. I mean, it was just random. Nobody ends up here. Nobody's like, oh, I'm going to go move to Lilydale. You go talk to anybody that lives here, and that's not how it happens. It's like almost a calling. It's just like a calling to come here to Lilydale.
And it's not easy to, you can't just decide one day that you want to buy a house in Lilydale. There's a whole process to it, right?
A whole process to it. And it's funny you say that because we get about 20,000 visitors, and most of the people, when they see the quaint Victorian town and the fact that we have a beautiful lake plus a historic forest, they're like, oh, I want to buy a house there, because you'll see signs up. But no, you just cannot come and buy a house in Lilydale. We are the world's largest spiritualist community. So of course, part of the criteria to live in Lilydale is you have to be affiliated with a spiritualist church and be an actual spiritualist to live in Lilydale.
So let me ask you this, because I know a lot of people out there who really don't understand what Lilydale is. They'll probably think of it as something like either the Amish or some kind of a cult. What makes this different?
Thank you for asking, because a lot of people do, like they're a cult, we're witches, we're this, we're that. None of that. It's none of that. We are, it started off, honestly, and this year we're going to celebrate our 145th year. And it started off way long ago as just a group of people that called themselves free thinkers, that were outside the box, that were very liberal, that wanted to just talk about anything. And that even included later on, Susan B. Anthony herself spoke here in Lilydale, because at the time females weren't even allowed to speak in public, let alone on a platform. So it started off as free thinkers. It evolved into Jeremiah Carter hearing voices telling him that he needed to build a camp here. So it started off as camp with tents, and basically mediums from all around the United States started coming to this area to perform mediumship. and to speak and give inspirational talks. And that's really how it all began. And then people started building houses, and it ended up becoming what we call a hamlet. So we do have the biggest congregation of mediums and healers in the world, to the best of my knowledge.
I'm just going to backtrack just a little bit. You were a medium while you worked as a detective, right?
No.
Okay.
Now, as a detective, and I'm going to say a lot of police officers are probably intuitive. Detectives, police officers are not going to sit there and say they're psychic or they're this or they're that. They're just not going to use that kind of language. But I would say I was always intuitive, but I was intuitive from a very young age, from a death that happened in my family at my house. And I felt at 9 years old that I could feel that presence in the house. I didn't even understand what that was. I didn't understand any of it. But that kind of segued into police work, when I'd show up on crime scenes or I would deal with death. I just had that, that hair standing up on your skin, and you just had those feelings. And I really didn't really understand all of it. And I didn't have time to study it, to think about it, until I was able to retire and actually come here and learn about it. Because to say that you think you can communicate with the dead, I mean, people are like, oh, that's crazy. But
Yeah.
when seriously, they just think it's crazy. But when you witness people time after time after time again give evidential mediumship, what we call it, of details that there's no way in the world they could have known, you must believe that something's going on.
Yeah. I have to admit, I didn't know that all of this existed until another friend of mine told me to take a class with Joe Shield.
And
And
that's how
so he just opened this whole new world up, because to me, I do spirit art. And so I thought it was just, people see, like spirit guides and things like that. I was drawing like because I actually see the person, I can actually draw the person. And so finally there was somebody else out there that could do that kind of stuff. And I was like, it just opened up a whole new world. And those subtle details, I don't know how many times where I would pass that photo to somebody that I sketched, and that person just starts crying because it's so accurate of their loved one.
And you're very talented, might I add.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It shocks me living here now, the fact that we've been here for 145 years. Number one, how many people really still don't know about it?
Mhm.
And number two, they don't understand it all the way, like you said, because it's kind of hard to explain. But what I can tell you of us being here for 145 years, that when you come, we are a gated community, so you have to come into a gate. We only have a season 10 weeks out of the year, so 10 weeks you're going to have to pay a gate fee to get in. Other than that, we're open year round. You can just come in and walk around, walk the woods, see what we have to offer. But when you enter that gate, undeniably, everybody always comments there's a feeling they get. And there's just an overwhelming feeling, because so many people have been sharing and putting together so much energy of 145 years. It's undeniable when you walk in that gate. It just is.
That was actually one of the questions I wanted to ask you on the list here, is that with so many mediums in one place, it seems like it would be just such a spiritually charged and magical place. And you just said that's the case, right?
Yeah, and they don't even understand it. It's a sense of calmness, and it's peaceful for sure. Now, I will say in the summertime we have quiet time, which means that it's funny. It sounds funny, but I mean it makes sense. They don't let us do construction on our houses. We try to watch, when we mow our yards. Everything is very calm, very quiet, to keep the integrity of the mediums doing their work in the summers, and all the outside services we have going on. So it is very quiet. You'll hear the birds, you'll hear the crows, but you will also just feel that energy. You can just feel it. And
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
So out of all the places in the world, like the desert and out where I live in Las Vegas, whatever, why that place? Why did they choose the grounds that Lilydale is on?
Because Jeremiah Carter, who was a very famous person, like I said, he said that he heard spirits telling him to make a camp here. Originally, the free thinkers actually started at a place about 10 miles from here, a very small little community called Leona. And there used to be a train that would come right by Lilydale, and the train would stop, and there's a hotel outside the gate, and they would meet there. And like I said, the spirits told this Jeremiah Carter that he needed to make a camp, and he purchased 20 acres, which included Lilydale, and they started this camp of free thinkers, which eventually turned into a camp of mediums and healers and very sought after speakers for years.
Does that mean, though, that that ground is somehow different than everything else, you think?
It is built on sacred Indian. It has an Indian history to it, so we are built on Indian land, and there's an Indian history, an Indian house here, native history here also, so that combines. We have a healing temple that is like a church, and we do hands-on spiritual healing. And lots, I mean, you'll see more people come here to receive spiritual healing, honestly, than come here for the mediums, because once again, just that movement of energy. And I have to compare, a lot of people compare it to Reiki because they don't understand really the difference between Reiki and spiritual healing. But we've had lines outside of that healing temple, lines of people waiting to get in to spend. And I'm one of the healers. I work in that temple in the summertime, that they come in just to spend 3 to 5 minutes with the healer, and they walk out in tears because they don't even understand what happened.
When did you discover that you had these abilities to assist with healings? And what sort of healings?
In all honesty, I would feel like my work as a police officer, honestly, as a detective, that I was kind of like a healer in a way, in a different sense of the form. And I feel like I've been that person my entire life. I've always been that person giving of myself, and others come first. And I really wasn't able to just completely put myself into the whole thing of it until I got here. And I didn't, in all honesty, my entire career, I was almost probably agnostic. I didn't have time to think about anything or believe in anything. But when I got here and was learning about spiritualism, and it is a religion, and it's a science also. And basically the difference between spiritualism and all other religions is that we believe in communication with dead people, basically, and we believe in healing. Basically the two things that separate us from other. So it was a learning process. It was like you going to classes. I started becoming a sponge, trying to learn everything I could. And then, like you too, we were doing circles. You're practicing. Think about how much of the brain we don't utilize. So when you tap into that right side of your brain, and you're creative like I am, and you start actually tapping into those creative sides of you and realizing what it is you're capable of doing, it's unbelievably, incredibly big and powerful.
So we have a question that came in. What's wrong with the witches? I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that question.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe they're comparing this with maybe Wicca.
Yeah, we're definitely not Wicca. This is not Wicca. I said spiritualism is a religion. It is a religion. We are a spiritualist community, meaning that we all have the same religion. And there are mediums here, and there are healers here. And you see mediums all over the internet now. I mean,
yeah, you do.
Everywhere. All it is that we have a lot of mediums living in one area here, and you can come here and you can find they have placards on their houses, and they'll say that they're mediums, and you can, sign up and get a reading with the mediums here.
So whenever you moved to Lilydale, what was that initially like for you?
Lilydale's a very small community. Okay, we have we now sit on 140 acres, I believe, and there's like 100. I don't know exactly, 180 houses. So we're relatively small. So it was very difficult for me because I came from not a huge city, but a bigger city. So it was very hard for me to get used to the quiet. For me to get used to, I got to drive 8 miles to go to Walmart and go to the stores. And I'm not used to all that. So that was hard. But in all honesty, with a 30-year career in law enforcement, I needed to heal because
Yeah.
I've gone through a lot with my job, a lot. And I feel like I needed a sense of healing. And I think this was the perfect place to deal with all that. And that's where most people that come here, they're all wanting a sense of healing and they're all searching for that. So to be able to live here and see people coming here for that, it's a beautiful thing.
What is the average day for you there when everything is in full service?
Yeah, our average when we're in full, like right now, because I talked to our president the other night, and for our 10-week season, which starts, I think this year we're starting June 21st and we end right after Labor Day. We're going to have 144 workshops offered. Yeah, it's a ton. We're going to have season highlights every weekend, though, because we have a big, huge auditorium that has been in existence since the 1890s. It's the same auditorium. It's an outdoor arena. We still use it. It's where many of the old people gave their inspirational talks. And you could come in and not even do any of that. You could come in and you pay a $15 gate fee. And that gate fee, we have 3 outdoor services, which means that outdoor services include mediums show up and they give random messages to people that will come to that arena, wherever it's at. And then we have 2 services at the healing temple. So you can come in, you can walk in, you can sit at a bench and get a healing from a healer. Or we have a 2:30 service, which will have an inspirational speaker and message service also. So we have a lot going on. We have 3 different restaurants. We have a hotel here on the grounds. You can come here and stay at the hotel on the grounds. And we have several guest houses.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, it goes from like, from crazy, crazy people, the streets walking up and down. And then as soon as we shut down, it's like, whoof, it goes down literally.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the history with spirit art and how that all started?
I don't know a lot about the history of spirit art, but I do know that there's not a lot of people that do it, as you know.
Yeah.
There's people that actually, my next door neighbor, Bonnie White, is a spirit artist. And she does it a little bit differently than what you would know just drawing. She'll draw all sorts of things because and I've watched her work, and then she shows it and she can find all sorts of images inside that drawing. So you're not necessarily just seeing like a specific face, like one face. She'll have all sorts of things in her drawing, but she's been doing it many, many years. And ironically enough, my other across the street, her daughter lives, and her daughter was the youngest medium here in Lilydale. They're generational, so it ran in the family, and you'll see a lot of that. Often it runs in the family. But spirit art, I like spirit art because sometimes I think for the naysayers that don't truly believe in this, like you said, you draw a picture and you don't know this person from Adam. You don't even know who you're drawing. And next thing you know, it's making sense to somebody. And you're like, well, where'd you find that from? Or how did you come up with that? It's very undeniable evidence for people. So I really appreciate the spirit artists that are out there that can do that and help prove the continuity of life, because that's what it's about.
And that's truly what the point of spiritualism is, right?
Yeah.
Just for people to reconnect and realize that there's more to life than what we see right now, right?
Yeah, that's all it is. And you can make we believe in God, absolutely, but it's the God of your own understanding, whatever that looks like to you. There's all sorts of different people see God in all sorts of different ways. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And we're accepting of all religions. And I think that's a beautiful thing also. But yeah, why are we to say that there's not anything more out there? You can't look up at the sky and see the stars like your background and not believe that there's not a whole lot more out there that we don't understand.
Right. So someone says, I think the early man created spirit art in those petroglyphs. It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's an interesting concept. I like that.
Yeah, it is. I always walk around the desert quite a bit and look at those old petroglyphs and things like that. That is interesting because they do have a lot of different imagery, I guess.
Yeah.
Spirit.
Yeah.
But
I feel, and I'm sure you do too, I feel very by nature. And I think that's what's very special about Lilydale. Like I said, we have an old growth forest. That's one of the oldest growth forests in the state of New York. And as a result, nothing comes into the forest, nothing goes out of the forest. If a tree falls, it stays there, and it grows over, and it's really, really pretty. And these trees are hundreds of years old. And then we have the water. And, what more brings you so much? The water, the trees, nature itself, the animals. It's all very fulfilling and rewarding.
Do you guys do like meditative retreats and things like that there?
They offer classes on all of it. I mean, they offer so many different classes on mediumship. I mean, just like I said, you'll have to see on our website. The catalogs are getting ready to come out, but any metaphysical stuff, there's just a lot of it they offer to learn. A very big span of stuff.
So that outdoor arena, there was another question I had about the outdoor arena. That's the place with the giant tree stump, right?
Okay. Well, we have one that's called the Forest Temple, which is Forest Temple actually has like an enclosed little thing that says Forest Temple, and you could sit out. Now the stump is an actual tree stump, and you walk through the woods and all the way down. And for 145 years, they've been going down to that stump and giving messages. And they have pictures of it. And, back during the wars, hundreds of people would be down there, especially women whose husbands were at war, who they lost in wartime. They were all grieving and searching and wanting answers for sure. But the stump is very, very special. It's right in the midst of the old growth forest. So once again, nothing leaves, nothing stays. We're very particular, but you can't trash and all that stuff. It's a sacred area, and a lot of times we have a path that goes all the way around. And I'm a runner, so I love to run down there. And sometimes I'll stop and just put my hands on the stump because I just love the energy of it.
Do you have any specific clients that you've had over the years that was really you just saw like such a transformation in them from the healing work that you can talk about?
Now you must understand that as healers, we always say we're not the healer. I'm not a healer, okay? We're the conduits of energy. When we ask people to sit for a healing, we tell you to go to your God, your power, and bring that energy in and through us to you. So I'm not the healer. I'm not a healer. I help move that energy, and I help bring that energy to you. And I can't say specifically, but I will say there's several people, like I said, they'll sit at the bench and they'll just be crying. And I'm talking about 2 to 3 minute time period, and it's not like you're just very gently moving energy around them. And they're just very touched. We've had many people come there with cancer, with this, with that. And I'm not going to say that they walk out and they're healed. That's not the way it works. In all honesty. But we have documented several instances of healings that have taken place. Barbara Sanson, who has been running the temple for 30 some odd years, she has kept a book of all the hundreds of healers that have worked in our temple, and they do document several incidents that have actually produced miraculous events.
That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's very.
So you are right now the pastor of the Church of the Living. Is that
Spirit.
right?
Yes.
Living Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
We are.
Is that part of Lilydale?
We're here in Lilydale, and we have our services at the Assembly Hall, which is a historic building here. And before I say that, all of Lilydale itself last year was put on the National Historical Registry because we are still historic. Our buildings, my house, several of the houses here were all on the Registry of Historical Places, which is really cool. So we have our services at the Assembly Hall. We are a spiritualist church. To the best of my knowledge, we're the largest spiritualist church in North America. So we have a lot of members, and we have members from all over the world, which is cool because we have a hybrid service. And it's just that more people are learning more about us, about spiritualism, and they just like the idea. They like We don't have a dogma. We don't have a Bible. We do have a set of principles that we live by. And in all honesty, it's just really being a good person and living a good life and believing in the continuity of life and in healing and helping others.
Do you guys ever get like a lot of controversy, I guess, from like the Catholic Church or people in your surrounding area or anything like that? The reason I ask is because there is some stuff. I have a friend that owns it's a metaphysical shop, and she offers like Reiki, and she's got gemstones and things like that. They do readings there, and it's in a town in Texas, in the middle of a Baptist area, and she just recently had to close the shop because of it.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I hate that. Like I told you, I was in Oklahoma, and I promise you're not going to find a lot of this in Oklahoma either. So I understand that about Texas. You're just not going to see a lot of it. However, in the mainstream of things right now, a lot of the hospitals are starting to incorporate wellness, Reiki. That's all coming into the mainstream big time, really big time. So it's becoming a lot more acceptable. We haven't had protesters outside our gates. No. Are there people that probably don't agree with it? Yes. Are they here vocal in our ear? No.
no.
They're just not, because like I said, we've been here 145 years. So we've been here a very, very long time, and that's okay. It's okay. Even when I was a police officer, my best friend was an attorney. She was a defense attorney, and we always said it was okay to agree to disagree, and that's what life's all about.
Right. So, you said that it's, the hospitals and stuff are starting to offer Reiki and things like that.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
interesting because recently, or not recently, but lately, a lot of physicians are coming out with NDEs and out of body experiences and things like that, especially the emergency room physicians. They're
Yes,
actually writing this stuff up in the medical journals.
yes, they are.
So it's becoming more out there in the open now. I think at the organization under Raymond Moody, I believe, Dr. Raymond Moody.
And he was here last summer.
Was he?
Yeah, he was here in Lilydale. He gave a workshop. He was one of our season highlights, and he was wildly popular. His story is unbelievable. We had a whole near-death week-long event where several of the doctors and people that had those experiences came here, because those are the people that are documenting everything we're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've been there and done that and came back and talking about it. And you're exactly right. It's just more and more and more out there. All of it, not just the Reiki, the crystals, the this, the that. Anything that could hold energy and move energy, it's definitely becoming wildly popular.
So I have another question that came in. Are these healing? I don't know hold on a second. Is it about power of the mind, or is it about tuning into higher dimensions
Yes,
to do it that way? I think he says, is it based on power of the mind and thinking, or is it using that higher vibrational energy?
exactly. I love the way you put that. That's exactly right. It's using that energy, and we just call it going to the God of your understanding, your higher power, whatever your higher power looks like. You have to go to your higher power, and it's using that, and we're conduits of that energy, bringing it all in and to you. Because we can heal ourselves. I mean, look at all the people. There's a lot of documentation on that, on people that are, healing themselves through that higher power.
The biggest thing for me with this idea of higher and collective thought and all that is being able to use this to even guide my day-to-day activities, as far as like dramas. Like I had a rough day at work today. It's still, I walk away, it's my choice of how I'm going to carry myself the rest of the day, right? I can let it's the same thing. Is that right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that too. I love that you're using that. That's really cool. It's part of our principles. So yeah, what we do, we make our own how we live in this world is how we live in this world, and we make our own choices. Personal responsibility is everything. And we got to take responsibility of how we're going to live and how we choose to live. And believe it or not, I've noticed, when I first took over the church, we had about 320 members, and we're up to almost 600 now. And I'm seeing a lot of younger people coming in that are embracing this religion, because, like I said, we're welcoming of so much freedom of thought in how you want to believe and what you want to believe. And it is about taking responsibility for your actions, and just believing in a higher source. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what that higher source is.
Exactly. I think the younger people too, coming in, they're very much not into the dogma that maybe we've grown up with, right? With the church. And I
Mm.
think we see the younger people, the millennials and younger, are shifting away from your traditional dogmatic religions, it seems.
It definitely seems that. And I said, I saw a lot of younger people here last summer for sure, just coming in, just walking the grounds. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. We have a couple shops here, that 3 different shops actually, that sell all the crystals and all the woo-woo stuff that you'd ever want. And they love it. And it's cool because I like it too. So that's a neat thing.
So you guys work a lot with, I think it's the Arthur Findlay College.
We don't, they're a separate entity.
Okay.
So they do their own thing. We do our own thing. Yeah. No, we're 2
Got
different
it.
liaisons for
Jeez,
sure.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, just offering sort of the same things, just at different levels. So, which
So
is good because it gives
holistic
people.
healing.
I'm
Wait,
sorry.
say that again?
It
Go
just gives
ahead.
people a variety of places to learn from, and that's always good.
Got it. So do you own your own holistic business? I'm looking
I
at your
don't
website. It
own.
says Wellness with Nancy Lombardo.
I'm a yoga instructor,
Okay.
so I like yoga's zen. I like incorporating yoga because it's such a lifestyle in and of itself. And I'm recently been playing with my crystal bowls, and I'm going to incorporate yoga with crystal bowls because I think it's a perfect match to do that. And I love working with the bowls. I love sound. I think sound is healing in and of itself. So yeah, I do that. I teach. I kind of incorporate some of my police officer stuff with spiritualism stuff. And it's a really weird segue, but I teach classes like on suicide. I teach classes on responding to critical incidents, trying to put it all together, and mainly for healing, mainly to help heal people.
Do you ever have like an officer who has PTSD come to you for help?
Well, I work a nonprofit organization where I answer lines for police officers in crisis. So they don't necessarily come to me, but I help out through that nonprofit on that way. But I have had the opportunity, believe it or not, a few different people that have come here. Actually, I'm thinking off the top of my head for sure, that are officers, and they're like, wow, and they're just learning about this, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of police officers out there, I'm sure of it, that are very intuitive. I'm sure of it. They just didn't understand, oh, maybe we're psychic, because you're not going to sit there and be a detective and ask a question that you don't know the answer to. You're just not. And a lot of times when you're out in the middle of the night and you're going around that building, your hair, when that hair stood up, you needed to understand why your hair's standing up, because it was all intuitive, and some of it was psychic too, for sure.
Do you know of anyone who actually found a missing person or anything like that?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I work with a I work with a lovely, lovely girl, and her name is Tiffany, and she's a forensic, a psychic forensic person, and we work together often. If I hear of a case, I refer them to her because she's very good at what she does. She has a whole group that comes together, a whole group of psychics and mediums that come together and work on these cases. And and I'm not going to say they solve every case, but they don't. But sometimes, as a last resort, when people and I don't want to use them as a last resort because sometimes they can be very useful in the midst of it too. But they can be very helpful. They can be very helpful. I'm sure you know a lot of psychics, and you can't explain how psychics know what they know, but
No.
they know.
But how do you, if somebody does, like say your friend actually sees the person and can and knows where they are they able to have any kind of influence on the case
Um,
legally?
I mean,
Because I
they're
know legally no, but
yeah, they can,
how does that work?
but it's not going to be like upheld in a court of law if that's what you want.
Yeah.
They can definitely give tips like anybody else can give a tip to law enforcement to help them. And what's law enforcement have to lose but to go follow up on a tip if they, because you follow up on all sorts of tips anyways. So they can be useful, and they can be a very useful tool to law enforcement also if you're good. But there's a lot of them that aren't good that try to do the work, but there's several that are very good. And I think they could be very helpful for people because I'd hate to, I don't even know, over 100,000 missing kids right now in the United States. I mean, it's a big number. I used to work internet crimes against children, and it's horrible what
That's
happens with.
amazing.
Yeah,
I know in Vegas there's I think
exactly.
it's a couple hundred go missing off the strip every month
Well, not
of
only
women.
but they show up on the strip being trafficked. So you guys got the best of both worlds in Vegas. There's just a lot going on in Vegas for children for sure. But the police are working diligently in Vegas. Also, there are units there because I had an opportunity to work with some of them, and they are on the ball all the time.
Yeah, it's something they don't really publicize. I didn't even know that until I moved here. Um, I didn't know, and I just went one night I couldn't sleep, and I just went downtown and walked around, and then my friend calls me, and she goes, "You can't do that here," and then she started telling me all of this stuff, and I thought, "Wow, I had no idea." So
It's crazy. That's crazy. But yeah, I like the fact that, and a friend of mine, Lisa Williams, she does a whole year forensic certification for psychics and mediums. And let me tell you, she puts them through the ringer, and she will not even pass them at the end of the year if they don't meet her standards. So she's getting a lot of them trained in this area to hopefully help some of these families that just want to find out, because I can't imagine ever not knowing whatever happened to your child. It's a
yeah,
horrible
that
pain.
would have to be the worst thing ever, and then you watch all these TV shows
Mm,
that have that kinda I just can't even imagine
yeah,
losing a child like that, having a kid stolen.
yeah.
Um, Another thing that happens a lot here in Vegas is, with the Native Americans, a lot of them are the kids go missing, the women go missing, but there's this thing about, they're not investigated like they would on the Vegas Strip, for instance.
Well, because a lot of that, because when I worked in Oklahoma, we were right there on Indian land. Also, there's pure lines of jurisdiction, lines of what we can do and what we can't do, depending on whose land it is. So it gets very complicated. And I think
It's
the
very
natives,
sad.
they're probably understaffed for the amount
Mhm.
they have to deal with, and that's probably what they're dealing with. But sometimes we interwork with each other, both agencies. But it's just a lot, and it's very complicated.
Well, Vegas, I think the last I heard anything about, people missing off the Strip, there's a theory that they're ending up over the border in sex trafficking.
Probably,
Yeah. I'm not real sure how that all works, but
yeah. I'm trying to think, that movie that came out last year, and it was very accurate about all that. Um, it was based on a true story, and yeah, sadly, a lot of that happens for sure.
do you have any specific stories that you can tell about any of the cases that you know of where a medium was able to help in some way?
Um, Tiffany had told me a story, and I can't remember the details of it, so I'm not going to say. So no, I don't. I don't.
Got it.
I don't.
When you were coming into mediumship, um, Was your life transformed? Like, I know you said you had experienced healing, but what was that like? What was it like for you? As far as like you were this tough police officer, and then all of a sudden you're now a medium.
Well,
It's just such a transition, I guess.
I still, I'm always going to be a police officer. My blood's always going to run blue. But for me, sometimes it was just like it wasn't believable. Because I'm right brain, I'm creative, but I'm also very left brain because I was that detective for so many years. So, well, I said when I started practicing and when I started getting information and when I got paired up with people, and I'm saying stuff like, "Does this make sense to you?" And it did. And I can't sit there and where'd that come from? I know you said that you can sit there and draw. My mediumship is more feeling. I mean, I just have
Mhm.
this innate feeling, and I can see in my head. I can't sit there and draw like you can, but I definitely see images in my head. And it was just like, this is just crazy. I mean, I really thought it was crazy because it just didn't seem real. But then, like I said, the more you work on it and open yourself up and evolve and unfold, it just gets more and more and more. I mean, last night I had a dream, and my sister who had died a year ago, my sister's in the dream. A priest that had died a couple years ago, he's in the dream. They always say that the veil, we're the closest to that side when we're sleeping, and more
Mhm.
and more that they're creeping in more and more a lot of times in my dreams, which makes me know that I'm getting closer,
Yeah.
breaking down that wall.
Do you do readings now?
Um, we're registered mediums here are allowed to do readings on the grounds. So, I mean, we could do readings in church or mini readings, but we don't do readings on the grounds because you have to go through this whole testing thing and become a registered medium to work here in Lilydale.
Okay. There's the reason I ask is because you said that you visualize a lot and you see them in the dreams and things like that. I have another friend who hears them
Mhm,
all
mhm.
the time.
Well, all the
Um,
clairs, I'm sure we learned
yeah,
about the clairs, didn't we?
my
And
friend Scott, he's a really good medium, and he hears them,
mhm,
and we had this big long conversation about this. I don't necessarily hear them
I
as
don't
often. I see stuff more, so that I guess that's why I'm better at the spirit art because I can sketch. It's easier for me to sketch what I see than to actually hear the message, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
But yeah, I mean, your sketch you showed me the other day was incredible, honestly. And I'm sure once you draw that sketch, can you not like feel into that drawing?
I do. So what happens is I'll pick up a lot of imagery. Um, Sometimes I'll hear a name, just little things, but it's all bits and pieces. Like it's never a story. I can never tell somebody, "Oh, this is your grandma. She says that your something is under the plant bowl," or something like that. That's just not how it exactly works for me. I'll see like the plant bowl or you know what I mean? It's like bits and pieces.
And
So it's a challenge to try to piece it all together sometimes.
and that's because you have to understand what you're piecing together, and it's all just work. I mean, it's all just constant work and working at it. And I'm kind of the same way. Like when I start, I start off psychically. Just I could tell you this, da, and then psychically somehow just moves naturally into mediumship. Um, and it is piecing it together. And sometimes I'm just like, okay, it just stops. I get no more. It's just like, and they're like, Judith used to always say, go back, go back. I was like, I can't go back. It just stopped. I don't know how to go back. I'm just done. I'm just done. But I brought not my thing, but I like to not play, but I love my pendulum too. I'm a, I'm a pendulum person and I like to hold things. So it helps me to hold for some reason. Um, when I'm doing messages, but I love pendulum work. And if people are not familiar with pendulum work and if they don't believe in energy, watch someone work a pendulum and you're sitting there. I remember showing my aunt, she's like, oh my God, because she could tell I wasn't moving it, but boy, it's just moving away and doing all sorts of stuff. And that's just energy. And that's how energy works. So
But how does I never really seen anybody use the pendulum at all. Are you able to explain that just a little bit of what that is?
um well, a pendulum, like I said, it's really working off. They said our fingertips hold millions and millions of whatever, uh, and it really just you'll hold it, and whenever I start like a pendulum, I'll always be like, "Show me my yes." Can you see that?
No, you'll have to hold it up just a little bit more. There you go.
My yes. My yes always goes the same direction. I'll say, "Show me my no." See that?
Yeah.
My no always goes to, so you check them, you make sure that they're accurate, but there's boards that they have like this one that, has months, numbers, and I can ask and it can go to different directions. Um, it's crazy how it works, honestly, but I mean, I don't totally understand it, but it's definitely energy and it's definitely accurate. And every time it's never not shown me my yes going one direction, my no going the other, never. And I don't know. It even has its own direction for I don't know, because sometimes it doesn't know. Um, it's just different tools. That people use different tools, psychometry.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hold somebody's, hanky or something and get a feeling from it because they had their energy in it. So it's just goes back to all about the movement of energy.
You're exactly right. Some people out there who they think that they think tarot cards doesn't work, or they'll think that, a lot of people that practice voodoo, they use those, I forget what those are called, but they're like cowrie shells, and they put
Hmm.
them in a satchel, and then they throw it, and it tells them whatever it is that they're trying to read. And then you got the tea leaf readers, all these different things. To me,
Yeah,
it all works the same. It's just whatever spirit language you're using at the time.
exactly. I mean, just exactly. That's exactly right.
So, I don't know. I have another question from, I think his name is Kasoon. He says, brain scientists have found out around 2 seconds before you make any decision, the brain fire up a signal to do things. In that sense, we don't have any free will. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that.
Yeah, I don't either.
I think we
Hmm.
always have free will.
Yeah, I think we do too. Because like I said earlier, we all decide how we're going to react to any given situation at any time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
And how we
but
react can change the whole scenario of things.
yep, I forget who the author is. There's a famous author from, I think, the 1940s. Um, ugh, why do the name escapes me? But his famous quote is, "If you control your thoughts, you control your life." Basically, it's
Well,
what is that book?
and you're the writer.
I know it's not Think and Grow Rich, but I know he wrote that book too. Outwitting the Devil, maybe? And I forget who the author is, but
Look,
yeah, that book.
you're gonna make a note and look that up.
Definitely look that up though, because it's all about controlling how your everyday thoughts can control where your energy leads, basically.
Mhm.
It's actually mind-blowing, especially when you're talking about energy work or anything like that.
I
But
mean,
anyway, back
everything
to
we're
you.
talking about is mind blowing. In all honesty, I said you can either believe it or you don't have to believe it, but it's that's your free will for sure. But I like to, and I don't say I like to believe it. I have witnessed it, and I live in a community where I witness it time and time and time again, and I see how much it heals people, and and I love that. I love that we're able to give people that back and give them healing that they need and help them with their grief and help them with their suffering, because there's way too much of that going on in the world right now. Way too much of
Yes,
that.
there is. And it makes me wonder if Do you guys ever collectively pull together to do like a prayer for the world? And the reason I ask because in Wicca, I think his name is Gerald Garner, and this was in the 40s when the Germans were going to invade England at the time, and he had a coven. He's the guy that actually started Wicca, and so what he did was he got everybody together and they started meditating. You cannot cross the sea. You cannot cross the sea. And lo and behold, something stopped Germany from being able to invade at that time.
Wow.
To me, I mean, you know, I can't outright say, oh yeah, that's what stopped it. His coven actually stopped the invasion of England, but something's got to be said about that, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the power of meditation, absolutely. One of the founding members of the church that I'm the president of, Amy Checkin, she lives here on the grounds. And her grandmother, she's generational. Her grandmother was a wonderful physical medium. She could move objects. I mean, Emmy tells me some stories, just blows my mind. And back pre-COVID, Emmy used to have a Thursday meditation at the church, a community meditation for world peace. And they'd go down there every Thursday, and in quiet, they'd sit there for an hour, and they would just meditate to send out world peace. And I thought that was beautiful.
Can you imagine if the entire nation did that instead of fought over
Right.
politics and things? How
Wow.
different it would be.
How different it would be. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more people. I definitely incorporate meditation into my yoga practices. I mean, it's part of yoga, but it surprises me sometimes how many people can't sit still for like even a few minutes. But I'm so proud of my class because they've really graduated from not even be able to, what is this, to be able to sit there, like 5-8 minutes, and now they're like, I have to pull them out of it because they don't even want to come out of it. But if people could learn to take some time and call it whatever you want to call it, quiet time, don't call it meditation, you'd be really surprised how beneficial that could be to yourself and everybody else.
That person is definitely me. So I'm a runner and I'm having to cut back on running. And we've talked about this, and now I'm trying to do yoga. Here I am, from years of running, I can't even touch my toes, right? It's awful. I'm like the world's worst yoga student. It's very comical. But the meditation part is phenomenal.
Well, you gotta remember, yoga started off with nothing but meditation. It used to just be, they didn't even have the movements. It was just all meditation. The movements came in quite later in time. But yeah, when us runners, and me and you've been running, so when we don't get our runs in, we're not happy people. So
It's very true, isn't it?
yes, it is.
But yeah, I should do some videos about me trying to get into yoga. It really is the most comical thing ever. But
And most runners don't. We can't even, we can't stretch. Can't bend. So yeah, it's kind of comical.
and we're used to everything being fast, right? Running is about movement,
But it also,
covering distance.
I feel like a lot of times running, I do my best writing in my head. I got to where I'd start saying it and recording it, because if I don't, I forget it. But I do. Yeah, it's very meditative to me, and it puts me in space for sure. So that's a good thing.
So Nancy, we're at the bottom of the hour already. Can you believe it?
No, that went by so fast.
It did. I know it always does. Is there anything that you would like to add that we haven't covered?
No, I would just like to tell people to have an open mind. And if you haven't ever come to Lilydale, or maybe are curious about it, heck, take a trip this summer and come check us out, because it is a little hamlet. It is a beautiful historic town that is a throwback into the Victorian era. And it's just a nice little place to take a few days off and just forget about the rest of the world.
What is your advice for somebody if they're looking to develop intuitively?
Yeah, there's so many different people and classes out there, but I would definitely say to research, because some people that are offering classes, they don't have the experience behind their belt. So, just do your research on people and read the comments, and because there's a lot of different mediums out there, and if you're
There
gonna learn,
sure is.
make sure you learn from someone really good.
Oh, you know what? Do you have any tips about how to decipher the people who really aren't mediums but are just stealing money from people? Because there's a lot of that going on.
There's a lot that going. I did a little class I was doing about psychics and mediums and police and all that, and man, there's a lot of cases of people taking money. If it's about the money, it's probably not about the mediumship. Let's just say that. And if they keep throwing, yeah, sometimes mediums will just work just for the healing aspect of it. It never used to be about the money, and it certainly has turned into money for some people.
It
Just
has.
be very leery, not weary, weary too. Leery,
Very too sometimes, depending on especially on social media, you get those little messages. Are
exactly.
you into a psychic reading?
Yeah, be very careful about that, and know the difference between a psychic and a medium because they're
Mhm.
very distinct, different things.
What is the difference?
Psychic is just a knowing, and sometimes they predict. Mediumship is clearly going to a dead person, talking to the other side. Whether person, animal, it's going to something that is not here on this earth plane.
Real quick, just out of curiosity, do you guys believe in any other spiritual beings besides humans, like angels, fairies, any of that kind of stuff?
We have a fairy trail here in Lilydale, and we have fairyologist, one of the reverends of our church. She actually showed me a picture that was pretty darn cool that she said she took in the fairy trail. Seriously, I was just like, wow. Um,
I'll have to look that up.
many people, many mediums go to spirit guides for assistance or your
Mhm.
source of higher power. So yeah, we believe in angels. I definitely, yes.
So where can somebody find you if they wanna get involved with the church or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. It's Church of Living Spirit here in Lilydale. Church of Living Spirit. We're on Facebook. My name is Nancy Lombardo. I have a site, Wellness with Nancy Lombardo, and wellness includes like overall wellness. Um, and then you're going to be on my radio show for Lilydale, a blog radio show next month, and we're going to talk some more. So, uh,
Yeah, I'm very excited.
yeah, that's called Enlightening Your Way. So I'm excited to have you also. So thank you
And
for
if
that.
they want to sign up for your coaching classes, or
Well,
not classes, but your coaching. I know
well,
you do some coaching?
Well, not so much coaching, but I'll definitely talk to him for sure. I don't know if people
Okay.
want to call it
So
life coach.
Nancy, life coach, thank you so much for taking the time to be on.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to The Gateway, your portal to the unexplained, mystical, and the otherworldly. I'm your host, C.L. Thomas, broadcast live from United Public Radio 107.7 New Orleans. Take care, everyone. Until next time.